listeners to the African Voices Unmuted podcast. This is a podcast where we break the silence and bring the stories that matter to life. In the next few episodes, we'll have discussions about the Movember movement, exploring the importance of men's health and challenging the stigmas that impact our lives. I am Timothy Toto. I am Timothy. I am 19 years old. I'm a student at Erasmus University, and I'm currently the president of ASA. ASA is the Association of Students of African Heritage, as you can see on this beautiful flag. We're a community of people who just love Africa and try to bring a bit of Africa here in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. And I do this together with my
Vice President. My name is Sean Shara. I'm the Vice President of the association for this year. Just a quick aside, guys. I'm really excited to be doing this. Just the Movember movement and also having Ox Legacy over here with me. So, I know maybe he wanted to introduce himself, but guys, I have to hype him up because he's really come a long way, made a lot of sacrifices to be here, and I don't think he ever understands how much you really appreciate his presence here.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. I don't know if I should do my introduction now.
Yes.
Yes. So
ahead.
I am Hillman Batuo, from Cameroon originally. Been living in the Netherlands for 8.5 years now. And I was also part of the African Association in Maastricht. So I was the president.
Cool.
So
Seriously?
I was the president of ACMAS. And now I live in The Hague, medical doctor, content creator, life coach. And I have my own personal experiences with mental health struggles. So hopefully we're going to be diving more into that as well in this episode and just talking about the whole spectrum, just the difficulties, tips and tricks, experiences, and everything. So I'm really excited to dive into it.
Yeah, let's go. So the structures of today's podcast will start with discussing what Movember is and what it means to us. Then moving on to the mental health stigmas in our African communities and trying to break these barriers by conversations, followed by discussing what it means to redefine masculinity, and finally highlighting the self-help practices for men. So maybe Sean, you could go ahead and explain what Movember means to you.
Yeah, to be very honest with you guys, this was, we'll get into it, but probably one of the hardest years of my life, just mentally.
Straight into it.
I just wanted it to be noted very clearly. But with that said, I really want to thank Timothy because of him, this is happening. I'd lost all my motivation to do this. I have it literally still on my Instagram, all my Movember motivation from last year's Movember, just putting tips and everything, going through it daily. And I was thinking throughout the year, I was like, wow. I'm saying all this stuff. Guys, life is hard. I'm really going through it.
Yeah.
But because of Timothy, he encouraged me to get back on the wagon and said, hey, bro, let's do Movember again. Because I think, unlike last year, we just spoke about solutions to the problem, but we didn't talk about the problem, or at least I didn't talk about the problem. And I think that's the great news of having a podcast here. We actually have professionals, people who have lived the life and are just like us. So that's my mission. And what Movember is to someone who doesn't know, Movember is Men's Health Month. What that entails is mental health for the man, prostate cancer, which affects the man, and testicular cancer, which affects the man. So these are all issues that need awareness raised to it, and a lot of people donate to the Movember page, which will probably be linked somewhere, but they donate their money and that goes into research and development and funding for screenings and all that sort of thing. So I guess I've covered almost everything from why I think men's health is important. But I also share how it started because no one ever really has that story of where did that start from, For me, it was a bit of a silly story. I was watching YouTube when I was in 2016. I was 13 or 14. And this guy, he was growing his mustache. Spencer FC. He was growing his mustache. I was like, that's so cool. And he's like, I'm doing it for Movember. And I was like, oh yeah, me too. I'm gonna grow my mustache. Yeah. Whole time I'm like 13, bro. There's nothing growing. Like we went 3 years and no growth whatsoever. But yeah, eventually, I kept doing it year after year after year, and then I started to actually look in and think like, why do I do this? And then that's when I started to get into men's health and actually think, oh, okay, mental health is actually something important, Oh, okay. Oh, I mean, I never really had problems growing up with talking about my emotions or that sort of thing, but I definitely realized that, this is definitely a relevant issue I noticed among my friends and in my family. So, yeah, I found it increasingly more important as the years went by.
Yeah, and I think the topic of mental health is very tricky because the other day, Sean called me to talk about the preparation of this podcast. And I asked him, so, yo, Sean, how are you? I was like, bro, we don't have time. We have to do things, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the whole purpose of this Movember thing is so men to start talking about their mental health. But if we then brush it off so easily as we were maybe taught to do so, then that defeats the whole purpose. So it's really in the little things. And that's what it means for me, like, to make people aware that mental health doesn't have to be looking for a therapist. It can be just talking to your friend,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can say a lot about this. I can really say a lot about this. Because I have had my own journey, right? Like growing up in Cameroon, I went to boarding school and I had a pretty average upbringing, if you ask me. I grew up in a house with a lot of kids, so we never really got to talk that much. It was always people were busy, people were around, you were surrounded by people, but we never really got to talk about things that mattered. And then I went to boarding school, and I was always the person who would get people talking about themselves, but never talk about myself, right? Wow. And then I moved to Europe, and then I have friends and classmates who are expecting me to express myself, and then I don't have the words for it. I don't have the words to describe emotions. I don't know exactly what I'm feeling. I just know the extremes of anger and joy. And then eventually go through losses, family members, grief, and the whole process, and then not have the words to navigate what I'm going through. Wow. And then have people around me tell me, but you can't express it. Like you can't be crying. Like people cannot see you crying. Stop. At a funeral, I'm like, excuse me? Someone died here. Like, someone is actually gone.
I think this is the appropriate moment. So
wait,
if there is a moment, this is the moment.
Yeah.
And then, like, coming back from that and then having to do with everything that happens in the aftermath of grief, right? And then anxiety said, do you know me?
Hey, anxiety came knocking
anxiety came knocking at the door. In case you did not know I existed, I will show you. Surely I exist.
Hello, guys.
So then I had to figure that out, deal with that as well. Of course, I'm giving like a fast forwarded version of just a few highlights, but it has been a journey of just unlearning a lot of things and trying to relearn or learn new things which are more, I guess, productive and more constructive. Because for me, it's like from personal experiences, I've seen that I went from a place of once denying that, I mean, what do you mean you're anxious? Just breathe, When you say you cannot breathe because your heart is beating fast, just stop and just breathe. That's what I always thought. Yeah. But then being in a position where you yourself cannot breathe.
It doesn't sound logical.
It does not sound logical until you experience it and they're like, oh, okay, shoot. This is a real thing which needs attention. So from my personal level, that was like the most striking thing where I'm like, okay, from that point on, I saw mental health struggles in a different light, right? And you highlighted on some of that where I think personally, this is like a personal opinion, I think a lot of things which, for example, we need people go to therapists for, I think you just need friends. I think we just need friends. And in the day and age now where there's a lot of loneliness going around, talk less of men who normally are not the most, connected with friends. You're surrounded, but you're not connected. And coupled with the loneliness epidemic happening, I feel like it even makes it more important that we have these conversations. Because people are really losing the ability to connect and stuff like that, and that only increases the problem. So because I've experienced the problem, I can see that the situations we're living in, it's only making the problem worse. So then that makes me even want to talk about it more. But we can go deeper into that, like what that actually entails further along.
Because I've also been thinking about the whole loneliness thing, and for me it comes to realizing, all right, let's just say in a general black man's life coming into the Netherlands. So let's say you've come from Africa, be it Kenya, be it Zimbabwe, South Africa, whatever country it is. And okay, if you come in at school level, so that's high school or university level, you're coming for your master's or your bachelor's, you're in a fairly good position to make new friends. That's like the best time to enter into a new country. Obviously, there's its own challenges. But what about the person that's got a new job and they've had to leave everything behind, everything, the entire culture. And it's like, come to this cold country from your daily sun, daily activity, your entire circle of all the friends, everybody you know. And now you're just there, like you're at a working place and it's in the Netherlands. Most people don't speak Dutch who come to the Netherlands from Africa. So now it's like, oh, you're really starting from zero, no friends, people that don't even speak your language. So now you have to try and actively make friends. And that is a truly daunting challenge that I feel not enough people speak about. It doesn't just affect men, but it is a real issue.
Because what was your experience? Or maybe what your experiences? I'm gonna try to not hijack the podcast because I'm a podcaster, so I have the tendency to ask the questions. So please interrupt me. But what were your experiences with moving here and making friends? Because I had a completely different experience since I studied in a Dutch setting. So my classmates were Dutch, all of them native Dutch. So that of course was a barrier in and of itself, where I had just been speaking Dutch for a couple of months, and I had to interact with these Dutch natives who were trying to accommodate me and my very non-fluent Dutch. So then that brings along with it a whole different bunch of struggles, right? But you guys came in an English setting. You studied in an English setting, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Did you find it difficult making friends?
Do you know what? For me, it's very different to Timothy.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
I had life on easy mode, to be very honest with you. I lived on campus, so I was already surrounded by international students, 1. 2, I study an international course. 3, I think I'm a fairly social guy, so what you notice at the start of first year is everyone is trying to make friends. So everyone is really open. And yeah, I also signed up for the intro program, so Eureka Week and the pre-academic program. So that really helped me. Also group chat, so that really helped me make friends and create a foundation real quick. So I was like, bro, everything for me was almost easy. It was just I'm just here, I've got friends already, and it's yeah, great. But I can totally imagine that, at least for you two, it must have been really difficult, because not only are you, okay, maybe not Timothy, but not only are you learning Dutch and starting there, but you're also, what I imagine, a minority. So that's already it's already a sort of a disqualifying factor that you quickly need to jump over and get out the way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was obviously different. I was born in the Netherlands, so I had the advantage of speaking the language. I wasn't born in Rotterdam, but in another town in the south of the Netherlands.
Like Limburg?
No.
Oh.
In Noord-Brabant, Breda.
You dodged the bullet.
So yeah. So I grew up there, in a multicultural, neighborhood. Then when I got to high school, things were very different, and most of the time I was the only black kid in those situations, but I still had a lot of friends who I'm still close with till this day. But for sure you have that sense of that you feel like you're an imposter or that you don't belong, even though people don't explicitly tell you or they don't make you feel that way. The one person who does, or the 2 people who does, or that one comment that they make, it's still, you will remember it and tell yourself every time you enter that room, oh yeah, this is what they think of me. But I was very privileged to have very great friends that still made the experience great. And coming to university, I was so surprised by how open and how chill everyone here was. And I've always said that, but I think it has to do with the fact that a lot of the people I'm friends with are international, so they moved away from their home country to study here. But they are so welcoming. Everyone wants to make friends. Everyone wants to do this, go to a party, do whatever. And it was just freeing. So honestly speaking, since I don't feel like my experience with making friends in university was hard at all. And that I know that's a very privileged thing to say, but I'm honestly really happy and content with how it went for me. I would say the struggle for me was more in high school and growing up, you know, puberty, those things, comparing yourself and whatever.
All right, fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, because I do think when you come in, right, you might have a different experience before university, and that's great, right?
Yeah.
But if you come to university and your experience either counteracts that experience you had before that,
Yeah.
or something new is created. For example, if
Yeah.
you were a very social person like I was in Cameroon,
Mhm.
and then I came to university and my first year was ratatata, like just I was struggling to fit in. And the
Mhm.
thing is, I'm a very outgoing person, right? But it was just the circumstances I was placed in were not favorable for me at that moment, right?
Mhm.
Where I was really doing the most to like fit in.
Mm.
And the problem was I had a very high level of self-awareness, right? So I was
Mhm.
aware that I was changing to fit in, and I
Yeah.
was literally voicing it out to my mentor. But the people around me who I was connected with, like my friends in Cameroon and stuff like that, when I would say something like that, they would have no machinery to even understand what I'm saying. It's like, you're in Europe. How do you mean you're struggling? You know what I mean? And I think that experience, luckily for me, I eventually made friends. I stuck with trying to make friends, and I made friends, and we're still friends today.
Mhm.
But I can imagine if you come here and your first year you have bad experiences,
Mhm.
if you're not blessed with people who can help you counteract
Yeah.
that experience,
Mhm.
that becomes your new framework of seeing life.
Mhm.
Whereas like, okay, maybe social interactions are just not my thing. And you know social interactions are like very essential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you get that part misaligned,
Yeah.
then the rest of your stay in Europe can be tainted by that experience which you had
Yeah.
previously, which I think a lot of people actually struggle with. Because I talk to a lot of people now through TikTok and Instagram, and people are just really struggling to make friends,
Mhm.
like just interacting with people.
What would your solution be? Like, let's say I'm gonna make a quick example. Let's say I've come into university. Let's say I'm second year, maybe not even university. I've just come to work here in the Netherlands or something. I'm just an expat and I'm here. How would you help me make friends? Like, I've already missed that initial opportunity. I'm kind of to myself, you know. I'm a bit shy. Like, I'm very reserved. What would be your suggestion for me?
I think the starting point, right, which nothing can happen without this happening, is you knowing yourself, right? Because if I tell you, for example, okay, you need to put yourself in spaces where you're most likely going to find people who think the same way, or who like the same things you like, or who are passionate about similar things to you. If I tell you that and you don't know what exactly you're passionate about or what exactly you like doing, then you're never going to be able to put yourself in those positions to find those people,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I came from Cameroon, and when I moved here, I did not know what I was passionate about. I just knew I was very good at book work. I was book smart. I could study and reproduce that information.
Yeah.
But if you had told me, okay, what tickles your fancy? What do you actually get energy from doing? I would not know. The only thing I knew was studying.
Mhm.
And I talk to a lot of people who come here and who want to make friends. People are really struggling with this,
Yeah.
but it's like they don't even know what they would want to do. You know, if it's like go find a club where you can talk to people or meet more like-minded people, they would not know where to go, what club to join and stuff like that. So I think the self-awareness, knowing yourself, that's where it starts. Because when you know yourself, then you can really enthusiastically and authentically engage in things that you like doing.
Mhm.
And that energy which is sent out kind of already attracts the right people.
Yeah.
That is definitely the starting point for me. Of course, the logistics are different, but that's definitely the starting point. Knowing yourself, because only from that can you authentically put yourself in spaces where you can find the people that are meant for you.
Yeah. I agree to some extent because I feel like the whole knowing yourself spiel is very essential. Like knowing who you are and what you stand for as a person is very important.
Mm-hmm.
But no one, like at one point you're in the, I don't know how to say, but like when you're so young, like at the age, I wouldn't say that when I came to university I knew who I was. I
Right.
had absolutely no clue.
Right.
I had absolutely no clue. I was trying to fit in everywhere,
Mhm.
spaces I don't belong, spaces I do belong, and then I feel like by trying as many things as possible, that's how you eventually end up
Discovering.
finding yourself. But so that's good advice for someone who already knows who he is, because there's people
Yeah.
who know,
Yeah.
but me,
No, but even for those who don't know,
Yeah.
I think then you have to be aware that you need to know,
Yeah.
right? You cannot be ignoring the fact that you don't know yourself and
Yeah.
focusing on all these other things,
Mhm.
hoping that they're going to give you what you can only get from actually knowing yourself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because if you are aware of that, then you're going to be investing your efforts into discovering more of who you are.
Mhm.
Because if you're skipping that step and you're neglecting that step, then you're never going to get the benefits that only come
Mhm.
from knowing yourself. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, where people come and they ignore that part because they are so focused on trying to get others to like them more
Yeah.
or accept them and stuff like that. But they forget that they're not even showing their real self. So, of course, how are people going to actually like them or know them?
Yeah.
Because they're not showing themselves.
100%. Because if I look at what helped me to make friends in university, is having friends who knew who they are.
Right.
Like friends who had boundaries, like, oh, I can't hang out today because of this, or because I don't feel good. Like having those simple, boundaries as well, and just character traits that are inherently yours and things that people just have to deal with if they want to be friends with you. I think that's such a wonderful thing, because this is, I think, quite famous quote that's like, the only way to attract the people that are meant for you is by being like
Exactly. Right.
completely yourself. So if you're trying to put up a front, be like, oh, nice to everybody, not super controversial with your opinions, or I don't know, very individualistic or
Mhm.
unique or something, you will end up feeling more lonely than you would if you were actually yourself. Because
Right.
if you're actually yourself and you find the right people, I think that's better than, that's not that controversial of a statement.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. I mean, I feel for me, I've noted growing up that oftentimes I was like boxed in, like especially when you go to, all right, Hillman, when you went to a boarding school, but I went to a boys' school. I don't know if your boarding school was also
Boys boarding school or just boys school?
both. Like there
Okay,
was a boarding
boys
section.
boarding. Okay.
Yeah. And growing up, it was always like, oh, okay, you kind of need to be this type of guy to be a cool guy. And if you decide to stray far from that, then you're gonna have a bit of a hard time, right? And what that meant was, okay, if I'm going to have a hard time, that means I have to be stronger to overcome that hard time. Or I either stick to myself and just keep quiet about who I really am, or I decide, okay, I'll just conform with the norm and then I'll be socially accepted. And I found that was a very interesting phenomenon that you just have like with the growing young man, and like how he thinks, and like just how life is seen for them. It was very interesting for me.
Right. I'm curious. You mentioned that you had particular struggles this year. Like this year has just been tough for you.
Yeah.
Are you okay with sharing those struggles? So I think that maybe gives something tangible too.
Okay. This particular year was really difficult because so I was trying really hard to make sure that I was on top in everything I did in life. So so that was like gym, school, relationships, and financially. And I feel like I got to a stage, and it was also really cold. Apparently, the season of depression.
That thing is real. Don't deny it.
But
Take your vitamins, please.
So February came around, and I was just chilling, just enjoying life, and then it slowly started to creep in. Like just slowly, issue by issue, it started to come, and then boom, it just hit me. Like I think the final straw had just fallen. Like the building had broken, and I was shattered because I wasn't going to gym as often, and I also really like to play football.
Yeah.
But it was cold, and I wasn't playing it as often. Academically in uni, I was really struggling in this time, and for me, the relationships they were failing.
That happens sometimes.
And I was broke. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was just looking at it and I was like, wow, this is life, huh? I've hit the bottom.
Adult thing.
Yeah. And then I remember just sitting down and I was just like, wow. I tried to like talk to the people who were closest to me, but then every time I tried, they were just never available. And I was just like,
Did you tell them that you needed them?
I feel like I didn't put enough emphasis on what was really going on in my head. So to them, it was really just like, it's just like a normal hangout or something. So I
Right.
can't even blame them there. It was more of me just not wanting to really expose too much that, hey, yeah, I'm really going through it.
Did you know what was happening? Did you were you able to tell it was, I don't know, depression or anxiety? Were you able to like pinpoint what was going on, or was it just like nothing was going right, but you did not necessarily know what?
I wouldn't say I could like give that diagnosis of like, okay, this is what I'm going through, but it was more of I was able to actually like sit down and just stare into like the window in my room and just like sit there and just, you know, do nothing and just think and just be like, wow, yeah, this is a really heavy moment on my heart, and I'm really going through it. And you know, this would happen a couple times, I think, in a week or so. And then I think at one stage I was just like, nah, I really hate this feeling so much. So I just sat down and I made a plan. I made a project 2024 plan. A plan to get my life back on track. And it didn't go as straightforward as I was hoping. You know, I was thinking, this plan is going to work so well. I'm going to be a millionaire by 2025.
Wow.
What was that plan?
Okay, the plan was, firstly, it was to acknowledge that, Sean, it's you've fallen off the bus here. Like, you're definitely in a state, and we can't downplay, we can't pretend we're okay. And also, academically, I said, all right, this is how I want to progress. You know, let's control the controllables. I realized the relationships, there's nothing I could have done about that. You know, like, what's the situation is the situation. So I said, all right. Then financially, I was like, all right, you know what? My parents said don't get a job, but I'm going to look for a job. So I started trying to look for jobs. That was a lot harder than I actually realized, to be very honest. But I started trying to go to the gym more. It was very convenient because it was literally 10 steps away from me. So that's something. And I also started going to football more. So as each thing started to improve, the other things would also improve. So if I'm going gym, you know, now I'm like, okay, you know, I'm tired, and I'm like, okay, I felt good about myself. Like, one thing has been ticked off.
Yeah.
So let's get the other things, and maybe not every day I do everything, but slowly and surely I started to improve, and then, you know, I started to get myself back together, and then we got back up. The only thing that never improved was just the job situation.
Right. And that can always still improve, right?
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Because I feel like when we're having this conversation about, everyone's story is different.
Yeah.
Right? When we're having this mental health conversation, everyone's story is different. And I feel like sometimes it's there's a lot of power in telling your story. And if we're having a conversation like this, then it would just be nice to, like, you know what the story is. What is your own story of triumph, or what is your story of what are you still wallowing in, more or less, because that looks different for everyone. And someone can listen to this and relate to yours. Someone can listen to yours, Timothy, and relate more to yours than they would relate to mine. But I feel like there's power in sharing our stories, right? Because, for example, I was in denial. Like, the first time I had like a depressive episode, I was like, this is just a glitch in the system.
A glitch in the
It's
system.
not real. Like,
When we got back, we were like, we're back. You know, like, glory to Jesus. Let's keep
It's
moving.
like commercial break.
Exactly.
From the real things.
And if you're not careful, mine was like borderline burnout, but I didn't have like a, you know, proper analysis of it at the moment.
Yeah.
But it was just, there was a huge aspect of denial there, where I see that in a lot of people now who I talk to, who just do not want to accept that they are struggling mentally, right? And I feel like if you come from an environment which I come from, understandable that you have those struggles, but you know that denying it is not helping you get to the problem, right? And I feel like these are some of the conversations that we need to have more in our circles, where you're talking about, like, you are reaching out to people and they were not necessarily being there for you, but then you're not expressing the actual need that you need them. And it takes vulnerability, and it takes you being authentic in your suffering to, like, tell people, listen, I'm actually going through it and I need help. And these are aspects which really go a long way to actually building that kind of support system that you need when you're struggling with things like this. But if you don't know that, if you from a personal level you're not aware that expressing where you are is actually part of solving the problem, then you're never going to get to that point where you want to get to.
Can I add something here?
Definitely.
So, I agree with what you say 100%. And for me, what helped when I was also struggling this year, so it was maybe just maybe it was in the air, in the stars, I don't know. So you mentioned something about not wanting your friends to feel, or you didn't emphasize that you needed your friends, and I think that's an issue a lot of us have. I'm speaking for myself here, but I don't like the feeling of thinking that I need someone. You know, I was raised in a way where I dealt with my emotions very independently and on my own, and I solved it on my own, and reaching out to other people, maybe you wouldn't be heard or whatever. But also the being heard part is when you could, for example, like reach out to the friend who isn't going through the same thing as you, and like knowingly, and you're like, okay, but what is gonna talk to this person? What is it gonna help? And what I've realized over the past months is that even talking about it helps, but it's also not enough most of the times. And at least I needed someone who understood where I was coming from. So the issue I was dealing it with, like someone who has been in the same shoes, and how did they get over that, and or how are they going through it? What are their signs of, how it's affecting their lives and stuff like that. So I think it's also empathy is a really important factor in friendship, or just in human connections in general. Like if your friends have little empathy, it's also difficult for you to reach out to them, because they won't understand or try to understand. But that's also a thing which we really have to look out for, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying the empathy is an important aspect of it. So not just the talking,
Yeah.
but the follow-up of the talking.
Yeah. Because if Sean were to reach out to me and share his struggles, and I never talk about it again, then Sean is obviously going to feel like, oh, he wasn't heard, or he wasn't understood, or,
Right.
That was my 2 cents.
No, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the intentionality is, if that fuels you, then you would definitely want to be there for that person. Like someone cannot just come and tell you that they're like spill out their guts, and then you're like, okay, great, good to know. I'ma just go back to where I came from. I think that's not.
And I think we also underestimate how many people there are out there that are willing to listen to us, because there's a lot of great people out there. I can say, even though I tried to reach out for mental help. Like I went to a therapist for a bit, and during like maybe the roughest period of my life, she was sick, and then it was Christmas break, so I didn't see her for a month. And if I were to have waited, like, oh yeah, let me just wait, like my life is falling apart, but let me wait until this therapist is better, like I don't know how I would have been. But it's that the fact that I had my friends and people who understood me or who were in the same shoes as me, that really helped me get through that period as well.
Right, fair enough. Did you think of seeing a therapist?
To be honest, no. If I'm being real, this wasn't like the first time in my life where I was like, ooh, I'm really feeling it. But I'd say this was the one time where I was like, no, I didn't feel like I needed a therapist in this moment. I felt like I had the solutions in my head already. That's kind of how I felt this particular time.
Have you ever seen a therapist before?
Unfortunately, no. I really still want to. And my roommate has been telling me his stories of him and his therapist. And to me, I always feel a sense of, I'm really happy for you. And I think, for sure, when I get my chance, I will also be happy.
Do you believe in therapists?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's a ghost or something. Like, it's a real thing.
No.
A therapist could help you as well, or do you think it's just a thing for your roommate or the other people who have therapy?
I think for sure it'll help. Because when you say like for my roommate or something, I get, you're putting the emphasis on. Do you think you're something?
Feel sassy.
Do you think you're special? Like, which, I'll be real, I'm pretty sure everyone in their life has been like, yeah, I mean, I'm different. Like, I am special. Of course, I'm not like them.
I'm asking you this, but I quit therapy because...
Nah, but in reality, what I realized is I am definitely like a lot of other people. Yeah. And in that, I do need therapy. And I think therapy, as I've been educated, isn't just for when the episode has come. It's for before it comes, after it comes. It's almost like a great system that you can use and apply to your life to just help you make sure that the structure is there, the maintenance is there. It's like taking your car for servicing just consistently, you know,
Right.
everything is always in order. It's
Right.
not until it's broken down that you're like, hello, guys, I'm on the A15, please come support.
Hey.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I see it. Like, you kind of need therapy consistently. But with that said, you have to also acknowledge therapy is a bit of a privilege. You know,
Ooh.
not everyone has
Speak on
access
it.
to therapy.
Right.
And with that, you know, we have to understand that, at least, you know, I'm not the... If we're going to go around looking for professionals here, I don't think anyone's coming to me. At least just in this room alone.
Yeah.
But I here's my take, and I am interested to hear your opinion. I do believe that there are other outlets that you can go for instead of therapy. However, I do think therapy also offers something that the other outlets don't.
Outlets such as?
So for me, I really love football. Whenever I play football, I think it's been there in like some of my darkest times. It's just helped me like clear my head or just go through whatever emotions I'm going through, be it like extreme happiness or like extreme sadness or deep confusion. I've just been able to use football to just like kick a ball at a wall, because at home I had no one to play with, but I just kick a ball at a wall, do some dribbles against myself in the grass, and that would, you know, I'd run around for a bit and get tired, and I'd be like, okay, I'm feeling better, my head is a bit clearer, and now I can think a bit straighter. And that helped me.
Yeah. And I think I'm asking you these questions, but you might think I have an opinion. That's why I'm asking you these questions, to kind of see if you have the opposite opinion. But I'm more or less similar to that. Of course, I am also the professional. Like, I work, and I wanted to be a psychiatrist at some point. So I did have an affinity for that, and I believe in it. But I do know that on a personal level, therapy is, like, I know theoretically is good, but on a personal level, I'm not sure I've gotten to the point yet where I'm like, I really need a therapist for this, right? There is value in therapy, that's for sure. But it's just, I know that there's a lot of things, like I said in the beginning, which you just need friends for. And I'm not sure that my friends cannot help me with this. Like, I need a therapist for this. There's certain things in my life where I'm like, okay, shoot, the moment I can afford a therapist, I'm going to go get a therapist, because this is just, I've tried it with my friends, they just don't have the skills to navigate something like this. So they need, like, an experienced person needs to talk with me about this. But then on the other things, which is just like loneliness, trying to navigate this and that and this, a therapist can help you with that. But I have this firm belief, and this is personal, I have this personal belief that if people just invested more time and effort in friendships, friends will be able to do a lot of those things which a therapist is paid to do now. And I'm the kind of person, I also believe in relationship building. Some people tell me, I would rather talk to someone who doesn't know me, to like share my problems with them. And I'm like, that's great, I understand that. But I, as a relationship builder, I'm someone who is very, very much invested in relationships. I'd rather share my stories and concerns and vulnerabilities with someone I'm building a relationship with than someone I'm not building a relationship with. I'm paying to listen to me. Because for me, I just want to be more productive in that. I want to, like, if we're talking and I'm opening up like this, is building towards something which in the future could serve as well for a mutual benefit, right? As opposed to like talking to a therapist. Nothing against a therapist, but it's just my tendency to want to build more relationships with people. It's like a therapist is paid, and technically they're not allowed to talk to me outside of therapy, because then it's like bridging the relationship between all those things. Where for me, I just have an affinity towards how much can we actually do in community, how much space is there for friendship which is not used now, and a lot of things which people are just using therapy as a lazy cop-out. You know, it's like, I don't want to have to invest. I don't want to have to be vulnerable with people like this who potentially could accept me or refuse to be friends with me. Let me just go to someone I'm sure is going to listen to me, someone who is paid to do this, and I'll get the help there anyways. But that's a personal opinion, where therapy is great, but I just know I'm in a position in life where I think a lot of benefit can come from friendship and community, which a lot of the time people just easily go to therapists because it seems like the path of least resistance. Of course it's not, but sometimes it just feels like that to me personally.
Can I ask, what exactly is your idea of like a good friendship? Like, how would you build a great friendship?
That's a great
question.
Yeah, you are gonna open some Pandora's box there. I attach a lot of value to friendships, right? Like, my friendships, the friends I have, And these are people who have brought me out of really deep places. And the conversations I have with my friends, I do, like my male friends in this case, I know very well that these are conversations which if another person heard, they're like, what are you guys, how are you guys talking about stuff this deep, right? And the thing is, for me, it's just because that's my, of course, I was not always like that, so I learned it. But it's like now that I know that that is possible, like you can have healthy male friends like this, I cannot settle for less.
Yeah.
So you come to me talking about the weather today, football tomorrow, all the girls you're talking about, talking with in the club, great for you. But like, what are you escaping from? What are you coping with? What is your relationship with pornography? Like all these things, which are things which people actually, struggle with at night, but don't talk with.
Yeah.
Those are the things I feel like you should be able to talk with friends. So my definition of friendship is just like the vulnerability, the trust. There's no limits to that. Where anything that is bothering you is something that can be talked about. And if you don't have the space or if you don't feel safe for that kind of stuff in a friendship, for me, that's just not.
Let's say I want to have friends like you. What's the advice you're giving me?
Be vulnerable.
Okay.
Yeah, allow yourself to be like dare to be vulnerable. Because the thing is, a lot of people, you can feel it. It's like you can feel it when you talk to people nowadays. People have a lot of walls up, understandably so. Because the moment you say something which does not make sense, you are cancelled. Like you're out. And I get it. I get the tendency to want to do that. That's why for me, like the self-awareness is a very key like aspect of that. Because if you're not aware of yourself, then you don't know what can be improved, what can be changed, and how to actually like authentically express yourself. Because if you're not in tune with some parts of yourself, then you're always going to be hiding those parts of yourself for what if people don't like it? What if people like attack that part, right? But you cannot have walls up and let people in. It doesn't work. Like the walls are meant to keep people out and to keep you in.
Yeah.
It's safe, understandable, but you cannot build authentic relationships and friendships that are sustainable by staying in a safe zone. It's a risky game. And with that risk comes possibility of denial, but at the same time, there is a chance that you could create a friendship that is so much better. Like I've never really struggled. I've never gotten backlash from being vulnerable, but I've gotten backlash from keeping myself safe. You know what I mean? That backfired. But I've never really gotten backfire from being vulnerable. So on a personal level, I know that the vulnerability always pays off. It's a risky game, but for me, it always pays off.
Can I also add something to this? I think having a therapist, even though there's indeed things you can't deal with on your own or with friends, I think it's a very detached way of being vulnerable. Because if you're vulnerable with a friend, it's someone who knows you outside of your problems and who still accepts you for that. The therapist is there for your problems. After those 50 minutes, the session is over. Because when I used to go to therapy, I'd have this thing where I was like, okay, some things I can discuss with my friends because it would just truly be too much for me to handle and to wait those 2 weeks. And then the rest I discuss in therapy. And then I'm in therapy and it's first like, oh, how are you doing? Like the small talk. And then you have 20 minutes to say everything that's been on your mind. And then you get some advice and then you leave and then you're stuck with those thoughts and you're like, okay, but I'm going to ask this the next time, blah, blah, blah. But if it's someone who you know and who you see on the regular, because I really relate to what you said. Also with my guy friends, I really like, this is something I'm the most grateful for maybe in my life, like my friendships as well, and especially the one with guys who are also my age. We've established this friendship where there is a balance of what you said. Yes, so like we talk about the things we like, the school, the girls, the whatever, and also the like more emotional side, like how are you doing? I know you've been going through this, your breakup, your whatever. Like it's very rewarding to know that someone else also has those emotions. And I think that's also a stereotype that is maybe placed on men in general or black men in general, that like it's not only surface level. I don't like surface level friendships in that sense. So if I can't have a deep conversation with you, it's very difficult for me to, be myself around you, because the emotions that I feel before I go to bed tonight is also a part of me, and if I can't express that, it's very difficult for me. So I see it more in genuine and ingenuine. I don't know about ingenuine, but like not everyone who you see on campus or you say hello to is gonna be your best friend, or you're gonna see tell your deepest, darkest secrets to. So for me, it's about the balance, because you can also always talk about your problems, and you also don't want to. Okay?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But like Hillman, you were saying about pulling the wall down and being vulnerable and open to denial. How do you deal with being denied? And like, not necessarily how have you been denied? Because I do believe that is a fairly interesting question, I think, in all of our lives. But how did you go past that where say, whew, yeah, that one was rough. But let's progress and let's build it back up. How did you go through that?
How did I go through it? I think because I'm a fairly introspective person, it was somewhat easy for me to put things in perspective, right? Where I could think about what just happened, get the positives out of it, get the negatives out of it, and get the lessons out of it, right? I could like put things in perspective to like understand what just happened, to make it more constructive as opposed to like a destructive, oh, I've been denied, that's it. Because I think sometimes life is not always fair. You know what I mean? Like sometimes situations just suck and you have to kind of just take the lessons from the mess up situation you've been through
Mm-hmm.
and like use that to develop yourself. Because the danger comes when you just feel beaten and you don't want to do anything with that and you just cannot see a way forward, and then you get into this self-destructive flow. But I think there's a lot of value, because I think the question also depends on what kind of support circle you have around you. Because if you have some level of support around you, then you can always turn to those people and like give them that situation which just happened to objectively look at it for you and tell you if there's something that you could have done better, there's something you could have changed, there's something you could have improved. But if you don't have that and you're by yourself, then the question is like, okay, how do you then cope with the denial if you're by yourself? Because I think that's the most difficult one, where people, we have a tendency as humans to highlight the negatives.
Yeah.
Right? Like 10 positive things could happen to you one day, one negative happens. The only thing you think about the whole night is that one negative. Right?
You know,
it's just a human tendency.
I know that one so well. Like I just I was sorry to break you. You just brought thoughts back to when I was younger and my parents would have their parent-teacher conference.
Oh my goodness! No.
I'm telling you, the teacher. And when I was older, I was now with them. I was there. The parent would be like, "Okay, so yeah, your son is he's a hard worker. He's really diligent. He just sometimes he has the tendency to talk to his friends a little too much. But he always does his homework always on time."
Always snitching on us.
Now I come home. Now we're having a review. They're like, "So Sean, you're so disruptive." And that's what I'm hearing. What's going on? I think you need to work harder. And I'm like, but. And the whole time I was caught like probably 2 times, and she's just mentioning it, just like, yeah, he's a social guy.
And also, for example, when you had a test, right, and you got a 9 or a 9.9, and you come home, you're like, oh, I got a 9. Are you not proud of me? Where's the 0.1? Where's the 1 point?
Yeah.
Where did it go? So I think it's also like, obviously they want us to be the best versions of ourselves, right? And not, cause harm in the classroom or, just, how you call it? I don't know. Perform
Yeah.
as good as possible. But I think because they're teaching us, they're teaching us how to be a kid, how to be a human, and how to do it good.
Right.
But you should not forget to also give yourself credit. And this is something I struggle with every single day, and I still don't properly do. But if you forget to give yourself credit, you will indeed end up in the loop of only seeing the negative things that happen to you. Also, what helped me with this is experiencing racism. For example, like the other day I entered into a tram and some guy said something, and I was like, I had such a great day today. Do I now acknowledge what he said or say something to him, or do I just pretend I didn't hear it, put on my headphone, and walk away? I feel like you have to treat life like that. What do you let in? What do you let affect your state, your energy, your whatever, and what do you not?
Yeah.
And the negatives you have to consider as well, obviously, because sometimes there's growth in that, there's lessons in that, but depends where it comes from as well.
Right, but the thing is, I always try to put myself in the shoes of people I know who are struggling way more than I am, right? Because I have the capacity to like put these things in the right place. Like when I moved to Maastricht, like in Limburg, there is a lot of people who are very much living in the past. Like the N word is still flying around left, right, center there, and it's like a very normal thing in some villages, right? Where I was in places where someone would walk into my consultation room, look at me, and like, oh, I did not expect this. I'm like, what do you mean? But I never thought about it. I'm just like, you know what? Today I have bigger fish to fry. You are not part of my, like, I'm not gonna like indulge you in whatever you're trying to do. Where I really had the capacity to like differentiate, okay, this is something which requires my attention, this is something which does not. But I do know that there's a lot of people out there who, because of whatever cards life has dealt them, do not have the capacity to do that. Where everything that comes in is let in. Right. And those people, when you ask the question, Sean, those are the people I was thinking about. Like, okay, how can someone who is by themselves, lonely, without the capacity to differentiate what is important and what is not, how do those people then make sense of what is happening? Like, if you go out and you have like a bad interaction, how do you, that person with no social circle, nothing to fall back to, and like already a distorted filter, how do you then process these things happening? And for those people, I don't know, because it's something that keeps me up at night sometimes. I don't have an answer for that because I don't have a lived experience, right? It would be cool to have someone who has gone through that to kind of share how they deal with that, because I think you're saying this from your experience, and like, I don't know your background, but maybe you had some predisposition which positioned you better. Maybe you were aware of emotions, maybe you know, those kind of things where you obviously are, you know, you're not a, when I think of a typical Cameroonian who came from my city, like they don't have the level of exposure and articulation you have. So then I can imagine it's a different predisposition than people who maybe have some exposure or who have been in certain spaces which give them a different perspective on life. You know what I mean? And for those people, I'm just like, I have a lot of empathy for them, but I'm not sure I know what works for them. Yeah. Because it's just so foreign to me. But I know they are there because I interact with them sometimes.
I was going to say that what happened to me on the tram and not letting that in and affect my day. It took me a long time to get there because I used to be like, people used to call me naive, and my mom as well, and my family as well. And now I understand what they meant because like I always try to see, like, not even try to see the best in people, just try to see the best in everything. As in just expecting good things from everything which let me down, or like, so for example, just when I came to university, I had a lot of expectations about my life. Things were going great. Then something happened which, disrupted my happiness in that sense. And I was just so disappointed. And the disappointment that I felt was what I think like very justified. But I realized I don't have to feel disappointed all the times if I just don't have that high expectations of strangers.
Right.
Let's start there. But if it's people close to you, then, I'm still very sensitive with whatever you say to me and stuff like that. But for example, if someone were to comment on this podcast, oh, I don't like his voice. Yeah, I've been sick for the past weeks. Like, at one point, you come to the point where you're like, but what am I supposed to do?
Right.
What are you supposed to do about a situation? The guy in the tram, what was I supposed to beat him up? Like, I'm not like that. I don't want to go to jail for, like,
right.
What if,
Yeah, I think there's one thing I can say that I think is quite generalizable, and it's a low threshold to start with, is just try to control the controllables. Like, just try to focus on what you can control, and like proactively, intentionally try to seek out what you can control, control that, and the things you cannot control, just do not stress about it. Because I feel like the problem comes in trying to control the uncontrollables, and then it's just like you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, it's harder, it's easier said than done, of course, but it's really is the way to go, especially if you're an overthinker, especially if you deal with anxiety or you have a lot of things going on in your life. But yeah, like, also when you say control the controllable, what I did when I wasn't feeling as great, I also tried to like plan for my futures and the plans that I have, because I would say I'm a very ambitious person, overly ambitious, because I can't do everything, in this lifetime that we're given. But in that sense, I was also still trying to control the future and like the outcomes. If I do this, I can do this and da 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 da. But at the end of the day, you have no clue what's gonna happen the moment you walk out of this door. Like, like absolutely, like you could, you know, fall sick on the floor. I don't want to say it because God forbid, but
that's the reality.
But
though.
that's literally the reality.
That's
And
the reality.
if you think about, at the end of the day, you made it through another day. A lot of people didn't make it through that day, and then you're like, but is what happened to me this day that deep? Is it that deep? Ask yourself that before you go to sleep, and that's what's keeping me sane in that sense. It doesn't help me completely, but it helps me filter out those things.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good place to start opening our closing remarks. But yeah, I really just want to say, guys, this has really been an insightful episode, and it's really great to have Hillman here. He gave me nothing but exactly what I expected and more. Thank you for your company, and thank you for joining us on our initiative. And if I may just ask, what exactly pushed you into actually being like, yeah, I'll do this podcast. Like, I'll actually take the time out of my schedule and help these kids out.
These kids out. I think because this is also like a reflection of what I do online, right? Because I have the TikTok pages, Instagram pages, YouTube pages where I just make videos talking about my story. And I've, over the years, grown to realize the importance of sharing your story, right? Where I have people now who just reach out to me with the most random questions. Sometimes you don't know what they're looking for. They're just looking for validation or affirmation or just something to console them in whatever deep pit they might be in.
Yeah.
And I've seen on a personal level how far these small things can go, right? And for me, like, because of the amount of people I've lost in life, what Timothy just said with not knowing what happens when you get out the door, that for me is a very personal thing. Like, it has come close. You know, you hear about people who have lost parents and people who have lost this one and lost that one. You're like, wow, my condolences. It must be really tough. But then you experience it and you're like, dang,
This is different.
This is different. And the thing is, there's just some things which loss would teach you, which you cannot teach anyone without them experiencing it themselves. I don't pray for people to experience it, but it's just my perspective in life has been changed by certain things I've experienced.
Yeah.
So if I can today, in whatever small way it is, contribute to someone else's journey, I'll gladly do that. So when you reached out to me, like I told you, the only problem is time. Because the truth is, I'm trying to steward the time God has given me. Like, I have just 24 hours, and I have a lot of things I'm doing. I'm trying to just steward the time. This sounded like something that I would like to do because it's mental health, and I know it's something that's very close to my heart. But I know I don't always have the time. If we can make the time, then I'll gladly do it. If we cannot make the time, then unfortunately it didn't work out. So it's just that desire to always make the most of the time I have. And if it's something that I think is a good cause and I can do it because I have the time convenience for that, I will gladly do it. So that's why I hopped on this.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
So, how did you transform your experiences with loss into thinking like, oh, I actually want to do something with this? Because I can imagine that it's a very vulnerable emotional state where I don't know, where you might not be comfortable, especially maybe with your background and stuff like that. Like, oh, we didn't talk about this at home, I'm gonna talk about it on the internet. How did you make that switch?
No, it was not a quick one. No, it's definitely not a quick one. When it happened, for example, when the last straw that broke the camel's back happened, I was at a retreat for church, and I had told my sister, because she was present, I told my sister, it's only an emergency. I'm not gonna have my phone because it's gonna be off. If there's any emergency, you can reach me through my friends. So I put my phone off the whole weekend. And then at some point on the Saturday morning, friend runs coming to me, Hillman, your sister's on the phone. In my head, I'm like, ooh.
No.
Picks up the phone. She's like, Hilly, you said I should call you. There's an emergency. Mom passed away. Yeah. I'm just there like I froze for a second. Then I remember running to the room, which was like bunk beds, literally screaming my voice into a pillow, right? For like a hot second. Then after that, I just went out like, okay, life goes on. And then when we finished on Sunday, because I literally suppressed it. One thing I'm good at is suppressing, because I grew up in Cameroon, so we kind of had to learn that. When I got back to Maastricht, the city, I was like, I just want to be alone, right? Because I'd suppressed it for so long. Went home, like I cried so much that I could, the sensation when you're like nerve. I don't know if you've ever hit your nerve. Like you have the nerve
Funny
that when you
bone
hit,
thing,
you feel like an electric current.
Electric.
Or when you've slept too long on your arm and then you feel
Mhm.
like your hand is numb. I cried so hard, the numbness was starting from my like hands and feet and creeping up. Like that's how bad I had cried. Like I
Mhm.
cried very intensely, where I was like, okay, because I could feel like I was losing sensation in my hands and I was not sleeping on anything. So it was just the pressure that I was generating inside. I knew it was not healthy for me to be alone. Like I wanted to be alone. But I know that like I would kill myself because like, I'm crying so much, I'm losing sensation in my hands. So then I called a friend. I was like, "Can you just come take me away from here? Can I just be with you?" I had no words for them. I could not express anything, but I just knew that it was not healthy for me to be here because I could tell what was happening with me physiologically. So then we went and I stayed with them for like a week. Didn't say anything. It was exam period. Did my exams, finished my degree, and everything. And then anxiety came, and it was COVID too. So a lot of things were happening. And then I had the anxiety, and then I was forced to start talking to people. Right? Like I was forced to start expressing things. And then I expressed, I'm like, oh, okay, I actually feel good. Okay, this actually does not feel as bad as I expected it to feel. So in my case, like I was almost forced to start talking about these things. And then I talked about it, and then I got the positive experiences from it. And then I said, oh, okay, more people need to know about this as well, right? So it was not an easy switch for me, but it was one which I know from the moment I started experiencing the benefits of it, wow, this is great. Like having that outlet, having that space to just go out and just pour stuff. Because I think a lot too, so it doesn't help when you think a lot. But just having that space for me was like really monumental, because now it's like I create those space for people, right? But it had not been an easy journey getting to that point where I could share so openly.
Mhm.
No.
Wow, can I give you a hug?
You can.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah, once we wrap up
Exactly, because the
podcast.
mics are there.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very inspirational. I'm sorry for your loss. I know that no matter how many condolences or sorry for your
Yeah.
losses you get, it will not change a damn thing.
Mm-mm.
But just know that indeed for example, even coming on this podcast and sharing this story, it already does a lot for me as an individual, and I'm sure it does also for you, Sean. And I don't know how many people are gonna hear this, but your work is really, really, really valuable, and it really inspires people. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me as well.
And
And if I can share some
yeah.
last words, just to encourage people who are out there who are lonely and feeling like there's no hope for them to be connected to people genuinely and authentically, where they can actually express themselves and be themselves. There are people out there.
Yeah.
Like, if you actually think about it, there's 7 to 8 billion people on this earth. Whoever told you the lie that you're never going to find someone who understands you and who relates with you at the level which you think you need to be related to, that's just statistically seen a lie. Like, it's just not true that there's no one out there who cannot understand you. And I think it's really important to have that perspective, because if you have the right perspective, that can fuel your intentionality with finding the people that are out there for you.
Yeah.
But if you believe that there's no one there for you, then you give up.
Yeah.
And that's a self-perpetuating destructive cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas if you keep the perspective that there's 8 billion people,
Mhm.
if need be, go to China, go to Korea, you will find them somewhere. There's a lot of people. I'm not telling people to go to China or
Mhm.
Korea, just by the way, but I'm just saying the world is big.
Yeah.
The chances are high that there's someone out there who understands you.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to not give up until they find their own people, until they find their tribe, because your tribe is out there.
Exactly. And something I would also add to that is that indeed you do not have to go to China or Korea or even outside your door. It's very easy nowadays. Like, just go on the internet. Just look up your experience, like, oh, I lost my mom, I lost my best friend, I lost this, I broke up with my girlfriend, like anything. And there's countless of communities on the internet, because at the end of the day, even though we might seem very divided right now, all we really want is communities, and
Right.
there's a lot of communities out there on the internet. And also, like, if you happen to be in Rotterdam and you're interested in Africa, ASA is also a
very good community.
Subtle plug.
Subtle plug.
But yeah.
But yeah.
Speaking of plugs, please do check out Ox Legacy on
Mhm.
Instagram, Ox_OX_Legacy,
Yes.
Legacy, and on TikTok as well, and YouTube.
Mhm.
And thank you guys. I hope everyone who is listening to this, whether it be right before you sleep, as you eat, you know,
Mhm.
the iPad kids, shout out, and just anyone, I hope you are able to take something away, and also this inspires you to have the conversations,
Mhm.
have the hard-hitting talks. And thank you guys so much, and God bless you all.
Yes.
God bless you.